Hello, everyone. This is Hana. I read the juniors lesson study and going to lesson 3 and lesson 5, lesson 6 and 7 because only have the lesson 3 and harmony broken. The key reference Genesis 3 and the patriarchs and the prophets chapter 3 and page 52 through 62. Bible story, power text, create in me pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Psalm 51, verse 10. And PowerPoint here, we choose to worship God who keeps us from falling. And have you ever done something that turned out bad? Have you ever wished you could change something you did back to the way it was before? That's how Adam and Eve felt. Try to picture what may have happened on the day when they made the worst choice of their lives. Eve felt the tiny feet of a butterfly when it landed on her hand, and she woke up, and the tiny wings waved as if saying, "Wake up, you sleepyhead." The Eve looked for Adam and found him standing nearby. "What will we do today?" she asked. "Today I want to walk on the trellis for the outer wall of the garden," said Adam. "I want to gather berries." Eve said, "We can do," Adam said at the same time that Eve said, "We can do." And in unison, they finished both. They left. It was amazing how much alike they were. Adam and Eve had learned so many things. The Creator had shown them the intricacies of the blades of grass under their feet. He had explained how they could smell the fragrance of the flowers, how they could see the colors of the birds, and how they could hear the sound of water across rocks. Yes, they had learned so many things, but they had so much more to learn. They knew they would never tire of exploring their new world. So can you see together here the butter? Yes, they told about the butter. Yeah, butterfly. So pretty butter. Yes, you can see it. I just make the reflected with my mirror. Yes, and go each day, angels from heaven answered their questions and told them stories. So one story troubled them, the story of the rebellion in heaven. Angels told Adam and Eve the sad story of Lucifer, the brilliant one who had fought against God. They explained how he had traveled from world to world trying to gain new members for his war against God. God's enemy, also your enemy. The angels said Adam and Eve were relieved to learn that the enemy could not approach them and could not follow them around. God had restricted him to the tree. Adam could not approach them and could not follow them around. God had restricted him to the tree. Adam looked at Eve, and Eve looked at Adam. Now they understood why God had told them not to eat from the fruit of this tree. How wonderful that the Creator had warned them. Stay together, the angel said. You will be stronger to resist the enemy if you are not alone. Together they worked on the trellis. Eve held the vines while Adam tied them together. Then Eve saw a berry bush and ran to it, delighted. She plucked the berry and popped it into her mouth. Then she saw another bush and ran to it. Then she saw another and another. Finally, she stopped. Adam, look at this, she said as she turned, but he wasn't there. A chill traveled up her backbone, but she thought it doesn't matter. Adam can walk on the trellis while I found berries. Even remember the angels' words, stay together. I'm smart enough to recognize the enemy if I see him, she mused. And besides, the trees on the other side of the garden. Eve continued her wandering until she found herself at the tree. This fruit is so beautiful. It looks delicious. I wonder why the Creator could not want us to eat it. Just wait. Here yes, terrible pictures here. So I want to show the Eve here. Yes, Eve. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? A tantalizing voice seemed to come out of nowhere, as if reading her mind and answering her unspoken question. Eve looked around. No one was there, neither Adam nor an angel. A serpent was in the branches of the tree, surrounded by clusters of fruit. We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, answered Eve, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. You will not certainly die, sounded the smoothest, tempting voice of the serpent, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Eve looked at the fruit. She looked at the serpent. Isn't this the most interesting creature God has made? She wondered in amazement. Eve sank her teeth into the pearly whiteness. It is so sweet. This is delicious. I've got to tell Adam. She thought. Eve plucked some pieces of fruit and ran to find him. Adam heard Eve coming before he saw her. She sounded excited. Then he saw the fruit. Eve, what have we done? He asked with a terrified look on his face after listening to her account. Adam realized the gravity of Eve's act. He knew that the consequences of her sin would lead to death, but he could not bear the thought of being separated from the one he loved so much. So he took a piece of fruit and ate it. So both Adam and Eve realized that they had disobeyed the Creator's command, and for the first time in their lives, they were afraid. They ran from the presence of God and looked for a hiding place among the bushes of the garden. Here, yes, can you see it? Yeah, here they hide in the bushes. Yeah, so dark. So different circumstance, surrounding feeling. So they going to like this here. Yes. So it wasn't long before they heard the familiar voice of the Creator calling them, where are you? They felt terribly guilty. I heard you in the garden and I was afraid. Adam replied, have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? God questioned. Adam pointed to Eve. She gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. What is this you have done? God questioned Eve. The serpent deceived me, and I ate. She replied. Adam and Eve realized the change in themselves that sin had caused. Where they were once happy, they were now sad. Where they once had peace, they were not afraid. Where they once had thought only of the well-being of the other, they were now concerned with self. If only they could reverse their poor choice, but it was too late. God looked at the serpent and said, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. Then the Creator turned to Eve, saying, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. Finally, God spoke to Adam and Eve. Adam and said, cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat from, you will food from it all the days of your life. Finally, the Creator looked sadly at Adam and Eve, who had joined the rebellion against God, yet he did not leave them without hope. The sentence pronounced against Satan, the enemy, was a promise to Adam and Eve, and I will put enmity between you and the woman and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. The Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Satan had expected to have full control of Adam and Eve and their descendants. Instead, he learned that they would have a way to resist him by faith in the promised Redeemer they would on they return to the paradise they had lost. This thought gave Adam and Eve a glimmer of hope. Their hearts united in praise. Their hearts united in praise to the Creator for His rescue plan. Their hearts united in praise to the Creator for His rescue plan. Yeah, this is with the yes the harmony broken. And then third lesson 5, lesson 6. Yes, lesson 6 here. The brother for sale is the key reference. Genesis chapter 37, 12 through 35 verses. Power text: an honest witness tells the truth, but the false witness tells lies. Proverbs 12:17. PowerPoint: we respect one another by being honest and positive. Have you ever felt misunderstood by a friend or a family member? Did it seem as if you just couldn't communicate? What might have happened if you had spoken the truth in love? Is here Ecclesiastes? No, Ephesians 4:15. Yes, here comes the dreamer. Let's do something to get rid of him once and for all. The brothers gathered as Joseph came across the fields toward their encampment. Father has sent him to check up on us again. The Reuben, the oldest, spoke up. Listen, let's not get too mean. Let's just throw him down this well. That will give us time to think up a good way to deal with him. But let's not kill him. After all, he is our brother. Secretly, Reuben hoped to rescue Joseph when the others were busy. As Joseph got closer, his brothers started calling out names and making nasty nasty commands. They grabbed him, tore off the fancy robe their father had given him, and threw him down the empty well nearby. Reuben, always a little weak, didn't want to get into trouble with his father by letting something bad happen to Joseph. But he didn't want to be in trouble with his brothers either. He wandered off to try to think of a plan that wouldn't get him in trouble with anybody. Yes, here the Joseph in the yes, Joseph in the cave. Yeah. So how do I call the brother? The other brothers were pleased with themselves and sat down to eat the meal they had been preparing. Joseph, bruised, scared, and hungry, sat in the dark, musty well. That's a musty well with the cooking smells drifting down to him. He called to one brother at the time, hoping one of them would soften a little and at least lower him something to eat. But Joseph might as well have been calling to the wind. As the brothers were eating, one of them noticed something coming their way far off on the horizon. Two of them jumped up, curious to see what it was. It's a caravan, one brother shouted from the direction it was heading. It must be on its way to Egypt. They reasoned. Judah spoke up. Why don't we spare Joseph instead of killing him? The others looked at him to see if he was joking. That way we want to have his death on our consciences. He continued, although some of them still really wanted to kill Joseph. They finally agreed Judah's plan. By the time the caravan arrived, Joseph's brothers had pulled him up out of the well for the traders to look over. They haggled over the price, wanting to get the most they could out of this young pest. Yes, here, this young pest here. Yes, they get the money over. Yeah, what? I wouldn't sell you a sick sheep for that price, said one brother as he argued with the slave trader. And I wouldn't buy your whole flock for that price, let alone one slave, reported the buyer. They haggled on, finally coming to a price they could all agree on. Joseph looked on in a daze. The scene around him seemed unreal. The next thing Joseph knew, he was being dragged through the sand by men from the caravan. They tied him to their other slaves. The ropes beat into his wrists sharply. He watched his brothers count their money and threw them a pleading look as he stumbled off behind the caravan. What had he done? What was he to do now? He decided that the only thing that might help was to pray for himself to the God his father had always told him about. He had no one else to turn to. His brother's God would have to be his own God now. A little while later, Reuben came wandering back to camp, still hoping to find the right opportunity to rescue Joseph and send him back to their father. He stopped by the well and looked down. He's gone. What am I to do now? What will I tell father? He cried, tearing his robe. The other brothers were busy killing a goat. They dipped Joseph's coat in the blood of the goat. Come down, the brothers told Reuben. With this blood stain on his robe, father is sure to think that a wild animal attacked and killed Joseph. We'll just say that we found it along the way. They laughed over their clever idea and got ready to roast the goat meat for their next meal. Here he is, he's just Reuben. Where here early the next morning they set out to face their father. When they arrived back at home camp, Jacob saw Joseph's robe with the blood stains all over it. He assumed, just as the brothers had hoped, that the wild animal had attacked and killed Joseph. The grieving father cried and tore his clothes. He wouldn't be comforted. The brothers quietly dripped off to their own tents and families. What they had done didn't seem quite as clever now. They were rid of Joseph, but they would have to live with their father's grief for a very long time. Their camp community had lost its atmosphere of jealousy for a while, but now it was covered by an atmosphere of mourning. As for Joseph, in those of deepest perplexity, he placed his life into the hands of God. He trusted that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would take care of him in the future. So that's the so miserable stories going on. But next story, it will be convert the others one. That's going too far. The lesson 7. Maybe we missed the lesson 2 and 4, 5. But someday I will bring them too. That's going too far. Key reference Genesis 39, 1 through 20, and the power text. The most important one answered Jesus is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than this. Yes. The Mark 12, 29 through 31. PowerPoint, honoring boundaries is one way we treat one another with respect. Have you ever been? Have you ever been going along minding your own business, trying to be accepted, getting your work done, and keeping out of trouble when someone started bothering you and asking you to do something you knew was wrong? Did it almost seem easier to go along just to keep peace? Or maybe you refused and then got accused of doing it anyway. A tall, handsome man in his late 20s strode brisk, briskly toward the Potiphar's main house. He was well built, with muscles that were accustomed to being active. He walked proudly as if he were in charge of everything around him. Actually, Joseph had been a slave in Potiphar's household for 10 hard years now. At first, he had been just one of the many slaves who worked in the extremely rich and complicated household, but Potiphar had kept promoting him until now he was in charge of everything in his whole household. Joseph stepped from the bright Egyptian sun onto the hand-woven rocks of the cool interior of the main house. He was well acquainted with all 3 stories with their polished hand-carved furniture. He knew every plant on it. Here. Yes. Every plant on each of the beautiful garden balconies. I'm sorry, excuse me. Yeah, balconies. He knew how many slaves it took to cook a Lucia, Lucius dinner and serve it on golden tableware with a background of live musical entertainment. Just wait. Yeah, because 4 stories, I just, the tell here is the really handsome Joseph already as a slave. Joseph was hardworking and loyal, but beyond that, God seemed to bless everything he touched. And you see, Potiphar had long ago recognized Joseph's special talents. Joseph had the chance to meet important government officials and educated men of science. He felt more like a son than a slave. But all of that was about to change. As Joseph stepped into the family quarters on the second floor, where he had an errand, Potiphar's wife approached him as she had done often before. Joseph had hoped she was out for the day. Joseph, where are you going so fast? For some time now, Potiphar's wife had been trying to get close to Joseph. Joseph knew that he had better leave the house immediately. The madam, I think I'd better go now. Joseph quickly grabbed what he had come for and turned to leave, but the mistress of the house beat him to the door. Joseph, stay here with me for a while. Who is going to know about us? There's no one here but you and me. By now, she said, moved very close to Joseph. Madam, your husband has put me in charge of his house. He trusts me with everything in it. But you are his wife, not one of his possessions for me to take care of. What you asking of me would also be a sin against my God. Yeah, Joseph turned again to leave. Potiphar's wife reached for him and caught hold of his garment. Who do you think you are? She hissed. You are not leaving this house. Oh, Joseph tried to get away, but she held tightly to his garment. It's an instant. Joseph pulled away and ran as quickly as he could to his quarters, leaving the garment in her hands. That night, Joseph wondered what would happen next. Things had gone so well for so long. He had grown from a simple foreign slave boy to the chief butler and accountant of this grand household, but he knew all of that was about to change, just as his life had changed when his brother sold him. Joseph heard footsteps approaching. Take your man and leave me with Joseph. Potiphar ordered the guards with him. Joseph had never heard that tone of voice from him. Potiphar entered Joseph's room. My wife tells me that you tried to seduce her. Potiphar looked into Joseph's eyes. His words were filled with pain. She says that you tried to attack her. Is that true? Yeah, like here. He told him to here. They are here. As master, I would never do anything to bring shame upon your house of my God. But she showed me your garment. She says that you left it when you heard her scream for help. Master, I assure you, I would never do such a thing. visibly shaken. Potiphar's head sank. If Joseph was telling the truth, then his wife would appear to be a liar. Potiphar had only two choices. He must have Joseph either killed or put in prison. He thought for a moment longer. Then he declared, "You will have to be placed in the king's prison." Potiphar called for the guard to return. "Take Joseph to the king's prison right away. I cannot bear to look at him." As Joseph walked away from his home of 10 years to the king's prison, he thought of how God had been with him in the past. He knew that God would continue to be with him in this new trial. Joseph would continue to love the Lord his God with all his heart, and respect those around him. Yes. So Joseph's story, and then here, but I will go one more story here. Sorry, yeah, juniors 10 and 7. Yeah, juniors PowerPoint 7. Maybe 7 is the Joseph also, and then no, already 7, 8. Yes, I'll go 9, and I will go 10, and I will go 11, and I will go 12, and I will go 13. It's the one term. Yeah, one term of that. So first, master designer. I will, if I have time, master designer, one more last, one. So the will be strange friends in strange place. Here, lesson 8, key reference, Genesis 39, 20 through 41, the 23, 41, and 16, 41, 41 chapter 39 through 45. And the power text, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. Proverbs 17:17. We remember, it's the Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. Yeah. For PowerPoint, we take responsibility for our actions, and we respect the needs of others. Have you ever promised someone that you would do something for them and then forgotten all about it? What happened? Did that person ever forgive you? The king awoke with a start. Last night, what little sleep he had managed to get had been disturbed by dreams that left him worried and puzzled. In the dreams, he was standing by the Nile River when he saw 7 fat, healthy cows come out of the water. Almost at the same time, 7 skinny cows came out of the water and ate up the fat cows. Then 7 skinny heads of grain ate 7 healthy heads of grain. These dreams were confusing him, and the thinking about them didn't help. The king shouted for his attendant. When the attendant hurried into the room, Pharaoh demanded, "Gather all the magicians and the sorcerers in the palace. I need to meet with him. I need to meet with them right away." As Pharaoh entered the palace hall a little while later, everyone could see that he was distressed. "I have called you together today because I need your help. Last night I had 2 dreams. I want someone to tell me what they mean." Yeah, here what they mean. He wants to know a dream about the dream. The king described his dream to the magicians, but they could not tell him what they meant. That the sorcerers could not tell the king what he wanted to know either. Pharaoh raged. "What do you mean? Do you not know the meaning of my dreams?" He rubbed he rubbed his aching head. I pay you handsomely, and this is how you repay me. I will have all of you put to death. Guards seized them. The guards began to surround the magicians and sorcerers when a voice rose over the sound of clanking spears. "O king, live forever," offered the king's butler. "I know of someone who might be able to tell you the meaning of your dreams." The king turned the butler. "You know of someone?" He glared. "Why didn't you speak up earlier?" "Well, my master," said the butler shakily, "I have done this person a terrible wrong. Once when I was in prison, yes, once when I was in prison, yeah, here, can you see here? I'm sorry, here, there, yeah, the Moses Pharaoh. Yes, I have done this person a terrible wrong. Once when I was in prison, he helped me and a friend understand the meaning of our dreams. I promised him that I would get him when I was released, but I have not kept in contact with him." And then who is this person? The king inquired with visible interest. "His name is Joseph. He's the prisoner who now runs the king's prison. Sir, if anyone knows the meaning of your dreams, it is Joseph." The king signaled the chief guard to go and bring Joseph to the palace. Joseph, newly bathed and shaved, soon stood before him. "I've been told that you can tell me the meaning of my dreams," Pharaoh announced to Joseph. "No, master." There was a moment of silence. The king cast a glance at the butler. Then Joseph continued, "I cannot interpret your dreams, but my God can." The king was impressed. He told Joseph his dreams and waited to hear their meaning. "O king, both of your dreams mean the same thing. The fat cows and the healthy heads of grain mean that for 7 years Egypt will prosper. The skinny cows and the unhealthy heads of grain represent a time when there will be no food in the land." Yeah, here in the Joseph. Yes. And Joseph continued to choose a trustworthy person to be in charge of storing up food for the wide country. 1/5 of all the grain produced must be stored, as well as all the excess food, so that the people will have food to eat during the 7 years of famine. It didn't take the king long to decide that Joseph was telling the truth and gave good counsel. He looked around the room one by one, that the magicians and the sorcerers dropped their heads. And finally the king looked at Joseph and said, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Genesis chapter 41, verse 39 and 40. Joseph was amazed at the miraculous turn of events and recognized God's intervention in his life. He trusted and God would continue to give him the wisdom and strength for this next challenging assignment. Wow, so miracle was here. 9, dreams to come true. Key reference Genesis 42, 1 through 45, 11, 50, chapter 15 and verse 15 through 21. Power text. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. Ephesians chapter 4, 32. Power point, because God provided provided forgiveness for us all, we forgive and respect one another. Do you know someone who has done something so bad to you that you think you could never forgive them? You would rather just ignore them than have to face them. You avoid them and can't even look at them when you pass by them. How do you think Joseph felt when he came face to face with his brothers again? Okay, Mrs. Andrews, the teacher began. Picture this. It's hot. It's a hot day. Hot and very dry. So dry that the moisture just seems to be sucked right out of your skin. Joseph looks up from the documents he has been sealing. He looks out at the line of people waiting to buy grain. People are coming to Egypt from all over the world, it seems, and the line gets longer every day. Joseph stands up, signaling to his assistants that he is going to take a break. He gazes out again over the weary, travel-stained strangers. Suddenly, he squints and in disbelief. There is a group of men out there near the end of the line who look very familiar. They look a lot like his 10 older brothers. They are his 10 older brothers. Now, Mrs. Andrews asked, how do you think Joseph fared? He was probably shocked. Marianne answered, I don't know about that. Matthew added, if people from all over the world were coming to buy grain, maybe he sort of expected that his brothers would show up here. Yes, here he saw his brothers. See? Yes, he's seeing. Yeah, that's a good thought, Mrs. Andrews said. In fact, maybe he did believe they would show up because of the dream he had when he was a teenager. Remember his dream in which Joseph and his brothers were tying up bundles of grain. Joseph's bundles stood up, and his brothers' bundles gathered around and bowed before it. I will bet he felt like getting even with his brothers, Brian said. What could Joseph have done to them? Mrs. Andrews asked. Well, he could have refused to sell them grain and sent them home to starve, or he could have put them in prison forever, or he could even have killed them. Brian answered. Joseph certainly had the power to do whatever he wanted to them. Trevor said after they sold him to be a slave, it was like a kidnapping. That's true, Mrs. Andrews agreed. Justice would have been served if Joseph had put his brothers in prison or even sold them as slaves. But Joseph believed that God was leading in his life. Listen to what he told them. Don't be angry with yourselves that you did this to me, for God did it. He sent me here to keep you and your families alive so that you will become a great nation. Genesis 45, verse 5 through 8. I think Joseph could forgive the great wrongs his brothers committed because he could see God working in his life. And Joseph loved God, Trevor added. And man, when and and when we really love God, don't we become more like him? So maybe Joseph wanted to forgive his brothers because God always forgives us. Mrs. Andrews smiled her special smile, the one that covered her face when she was especially pleased with what someone had said. I think you stated a really important point. She said Joseph forgave his brothers. He gave them food. He gave them a home in Egypt, and he took care of them all during the famine. And the Joseph's forgiving attitude does make one think of God, doesn't it? Yes. Here, you see, they are crying and crying. Yes, he does me. But consider this. Do you think Joseph's brothers really felt forgiven? The class was quiet. Marian raised her hand. No, I don't, she said, because when their father Jacob died, they were afraid that Joseph would finally get even with them. I think that's what happens with us sometimes too. Mrs. Andrews said, sometimes we just can't believe that God has really forgiven us. Will somebody please read Genesis 50:21 for us? I've got it, Matthew said. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Trevor waved his arm. He waved both his arms in the air. I know what you are going to say, he exclaimed. You are going to say that this story is in the Bible to help us get a better picture of God and how he treats us. Mrs. Andrews walked down the aisle and gave Trevor a high five. You are absolutely right. She said, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, this is the end of the lesson 9. Lesson 1 and lesson 2. Lesson 8. And then we finished lesson 9. Yes, we will going to next time. Yes, next time. The other story. Bye, Junior.